This video will be a supplement to my last Flat Earth Proof number 16 video. Please watch that video first if you haven't. In that video, I discussed two related topics. First, I explained how one of the globe propagandist's favorite arguments regarding Mount Rainier, upward shadows, was provably false. A big thanks again to P-Brain for first presenting this argument. The globe claim is that when the sun allegedly sets at an angle lower than the base of Mount Rainier, like in this diagram, the mountain allegedly casts an upward shadow onto the underside of the clouds above Mount Rainier. Despite the initial appearance, these photos do not show an upward shadow caused by a sun which is angled lower than the horizon. These mountain shadows are simply downward shadows, as proven from time-lapse footage and photographs from mountain summits. These shadows only appear to be upward shadows based on perspective when filmed from below. Photos like these are always filmed from a lower elevation. No photo or video exists from the summit of a mountain showing an upward shadow of the mountain cast onto the underside of clouds above the observer. Second, in my video I discussed the overlooked fact that because there is no upward Earth curve shadow caused by a sun at a lower angle than the observer's horizon, like in this diagram, there cannot be a globe. Under the globe model, there should be a giant upward Earth bulge shadow racing across the underside of clouds from east to west that would look something like this. In fact, the positions of the globe propagandists are mutually exclusive. One cannot reasonably claim that this is a picture of an upward shadow of a mountain on the underside of clouds and then ignore the fact that there is no similar Earth bulge upward shadow. Furthermore, under the globe, this Earth bulge upward shadow would then overtake the alleged Mount Rainier shadow as the angle of the sun continues to dip further below. Obviously, this has never happened. The globe proponents have responded to my video with this video from propagandist Bob, and I assume it's the best counter-argument they could come up with. Of course, many of you will not be shocked about this, but instead of actually addressing what I thought were my two easy-to-understand arguments, Bob instead resorted to misrepresentation, red herrings, and deceiving his viewers. Regardless, Bob's sleight of hand and dismal failure to actually address my 2 points only confirms the weakness of the globe propagandists and gives me the opportunity to address this no upward Earth curve shadow flat Earth proof in more depth. Let's begin with point number 1. This is not an upward mountain shadow. Here is a clip from Bob's response video.
Now, there was a flat earther by the name of P-Brain and I that went round and round on this about a year and a half ago, and it got so bad that P-Brain actually falsified some of his evidence to try and prove me wrong. Nobody bought it. Now, Taboo Conspiracy is trying to go down the same path with this, and that is that he put up some ambiguous pictures of the shadow of Mount Rainier being cast on the clouds above it. Now, every single one of them showed the shadow starting at the peak of Mount Rainier, because that's his argument, that the mountain is actually above the clouds rather than below it. So I thought that I would show this one right here. I think that anybody that is honest with themselves can see very clearly that that mountain peak is well below the cloud level, and the shadow is being cast upward onto the clouds. There's a continuous cloud deck over the mountain. The shadow is clearly angled upward.
Bob first claimed that I somehow only used ambiguous pictures and avoided this special photo that he's using. Sorry, Bob. I used a lot of photos of the same event, and here is the same photo you used that was actually included in my original video. I didn't avoid anything, but I'm willing to call that mere sloppiness on your part. Secondly, and more importantly, Bob completely avoided P-Brain's argument by again using a photo from below Mount Rainier to repeat this juvenile globe fallacy. Despite the appearance, that shadow is being cast on clouds below and maybe slightly horizontal to the mountain peak. There is no shadow being cast above the mountain onto the underside of the clouds. If you look closely, those clouds in the shadow are likely slightly below the two highest points of Mount Rainier. You can see it's just the two highest points of the mountain casting the shadow, as the shadow lacks the width and features of the entire mountain. The lighting and perspective only create the illusion that the clouds are above the mountain. Even some flat earthers would claim that the sunlight is instead reflecting off of the ocean water and casting an upward shadow. Although plausible, they're mistaken as well. So how can I say this with certainty? You just need to apply some logic here. If this mountain shadow were an upward shadow, caused by the sun being at an angle lower than the base of the mountain, as claimed by the globe proponents, then this event would frequently happen at both sunrise and sunset, depending on where the mountain is located. Thus, if you were on top of Mount Rainier at sunset, you'd see that upward shadow above your head on the bottom of the clouds, well above your vantage point if the sun were truly angled below the base of the mountain. But this upward shadow never happens, and Bob certainly did not provide any evidence otherwise. This is called negative evidence. It is the absence of what should happen under a given set of circumstances. And this is key. The observer must be at the very top of the mountain. If the observer is below the top, then there will be a perspective illusion of the shadow being cast above the mountain. For example, you can't look at something like these light poles and claim that since this light pole appears taller than this light pole, that this light pole must be physically actually taller. The only way to truly determine respective sizes is to place yourself at the same height of the light pole. For you flat earthers who think this is showing a reflection of sunlight off of water, resulting in an upward shadow, then please show me this upward shadow being cast on the underside of clouds filmed at the vantage point on the peak of a mountain. Fortunately, a lot of people like to take pictures and videos on top of summits at sunrise and sunset because it looks awesome. There is substantial proof that this upward shadow never happens, as there is ample footage from the tops of mountains like these at sunrise and sunset. As you can see from multiple photos, videos, and even time-lapse videos filmed from the correct vantage point on the summit, the shadow of the mountain peak tip only extends to the horizon line, which is based on the position of the photographer, so long as the observer is at the very peak of the mountain. As a contrary example, if there was snow blowing above the observer, then the shadow of the blowing snow will appear above the observer's horizon, like in this photo. Do you see the difference between this photo and the others? The observer here is below both the peak and the blowing snow, which again creates the illusion of an upward shadow. I really do like looking at these long mountain shadows. This video demonstrates what some call the longest shadow on Earth. I'm not sure about that, but it's beautiful. Here's an actual video of Mount Rainier's shadow. Notice again where the shadow ends, at the horizon. This one was filmed from Mount Hood in Oregon with a drone. How many of these do you actually need to see? I can't help the willfully blind and soulless lying propagandists who will continue to deceive. Obviously, Bob and his minions aren't going to concede the issue because they'd have to give up on the globe. Bob will continue to evade the argument and show pictures taken from below the mountain and pretend as though he has proven his point. But for the honest, objective, reasonable person, you must reach the obvious conclusion. There is no upward mountain shadow being cast on the underside of clouds, as proven from ample photographic evidence filmed from the tops of mountains. But let's get to part 2, which is my primary point. No upward globe bulge shadow proves there is no globe. Here is Bob trying to explain the issue. He actually gets the first part right, in that this is a testable criterion and will prove it either way, sphere or flat.
Well, this seems like rather interesting evidence. This is a criteria, a testable criteria. that Taboo Conspiracy is putting out for the flat Earth. So, if my understanding is correct, and you guys check me in the comments if I'm not, if we see this, that would be evidence of a spherical Earth. If we don't see it, that wouldn't necessarily rule out the spherical Earth, but the bottom line is, if we do see it, the Earth is clearly spherical.
You were close, Bob, but you didn't get that last part right. Let me rephrase your statement to make it correct. If we see this, namely a giant Earth bulge shadow moving rapidly across the bottom of the clouds from east to west, that would be substantial evidence of a spherical Earth. If we don't see this, then that would be substantial evidence the Earth is not a sphere. Does this upward curvature shadow happen? Has it ever been filmed? Has anyone ever photographed an obvious Earth bulge shadow traveling rapidly across the underside of clouds as the sun's angle lowers with respect to the observer's horizon line? This shadow would be overhead and would move quickly from east to west as the Earth supposedly rotates at 1,000 miles per hour. This same quick movement would apply to the alleged Mount Rainier upward shadow, and again, that doesn't happen. Maybe a mathematics or AutoCAD guru can give us a rough time frame of how long this Earth bulge shadow would be visible if we indeed lived on a rotating ball with typical overhead clouds. I think it would be quick, but I'd like to see the actual number. But I've made a couple more rough diagrams to illustrate the point further, because it really seems as though the propagandists are having a difficult time understanding this. For example, here's Bob either misunderstanding or misrepresenting my argument, as his model has the Earth shadow wrapped over the clouds. Anyways, here's Charlie Brown standing on top of the ball Earth as he's supposedly starting to lean backwards away from the setting sun. The sun angle is coming in from the lower left corner, represented by the yellow arrow. If Charlie were to turn around to the east, he'd theoretically see the Earth's bulge shadow starting to hit the underside of the clouds. Now, we're a little further into our sunset, and the sun's angle is now lower with respect to Charlie. Charlie's shadow is a little longer, and the upward Earth bulge shadow should now be moving across the bottom of the clouds, traveling quickly from east to west as Charlie continues to allegedly fall backwards at 1,000 miles per hour. Now, Mr. Brown is entirely in the Earth shadow, but the Earth bulge shadow should still be hitting the bottom of the clouds and will continue to do so until all of the visible clouds are eclipsed by the moving shadow. If Charlie were to look up, he'd see the upward Earth bulge shadow running across the clouds, looking something like this. Of course, my illustration is showing a perfect example where there are clear skies to the west and clouds to the east, but this should still be a frequent event, visible at both sunrise and sunset. Also, if you add in some extra clouds in an airplane, shouldn't we get some interesting shadows on the underside of the visible clouds, rapidly moving across the sky? Simply stated, there is no evidence that the sun's angle ever gets lower than the horizon, which unequivocally proves the globe faults. Does Bob provide any evidence of this giant globe curvature shadow moving rapidly across the underside of the clouds from east to west? Of course not. Instead, Bob simply points out the obvious fact that the lower atmosphere to the east, that's to the east and away from the setting sun, is darker, with a pinkish hue above it. This pinkish hue is referred to as the belt of Venus, and it certainly does not prove a globe Earth. Let's hear a small clip of Bob's argument.
You can see an area of dark sky with an area of pink sky above it as you look to the east. That is the anti-twilight. But let's go back and look at the photograph again. What is this area of darkness right here? We are rotating into the shadow of the Earth. This is the shadow of the Earth. Exactly what Taboo Conspiracy is asking to see.
Did you catch it? Bob just lied. Here it is again.
Exactly what Taboo Conspiracy is asking to see.
No, Bob, I thought I was pretty clear. I asked for evidence of a giant globe Earth curvature shadow moving rapidly on the underside of the clouds, which would be strong evidence of a sun that is angled lower than the horizon of a spherical Earth. the lack of which is strong evidence that the Earth is flat. Bob's fallacy here is known as a straw man argument. Bob clearly misrepresented my easy-to-understand argument in order to try to defeat it. It's shameful and pathetic, even for Bob. Let's be clear. We all know the atmosphere gets darker away from the setting sun towards the east, and we all understand the globe claim that night is allegedly caused by the Earth's shadow. That is a red herring. We flat earthers have a much different understanding of what is causing that darkness in the east and subsequently nighttime. And it's not the Earth's shadow. This darkness is caused by the moving sun getting further away from the observer. I suggest everyone watch Dan Dimension's video regarding sunlight. I will have a link in the description. Flat earthers like me generally believe daylight is the ionization of atmospheric gases, which changes from the homosphere to the heterosphere, causing different colors to appear, including the belt of Venus. As you can see in this high altitude footage, there's the darkness you see below the belt of Venus to the east, and the sun is still visible in the sky. The sun's reaction with atmospheric gases of the sky is limited in distance, and that's what causes your darkness to the east. I agree with Dan Dimension and the flat earth theory that the termination line is the outer edge of the sun's plasma field, which matches this footage perfectly. But this issue has little to do with my original argument. If anyone is honestly interested in understanding how the sun possibly sets on a flat earth, there are many good videos out there, including this one from Rob Skiba, this one from DITRH, this one from P-Brain, this one from me and Good Times for All, and this video of mine that explains my theory of how the sun sets on a flat earth. I'll have links in the description. But let's get back to Strawman Bob.
Now here's an excellent image taken from a mountaintop, just as Taboo Conspiracy asked for, showing the shadow of the Earth, the belt of Venus, and the thin upper atmosphere off in the distance above the belt of Venus.
Did you catch that? He did it again.
Now here's an excellent image taken from a mountaintop, just as Taboo Conspiracy asked for.
There's the aphorism to never ascribe to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. But this is the second clear lie by Bob, and I don't think he's this stupid. I certainly hope there aren't sincere globe believers dumb enough to fall for this nonsense. No, Bob, I did not ask for a picture of darkness to the east away from the setting sun from a mountaintop. Bob has taken the part 1 argument that there is no photograph of the alleged upward Mount Rainier shadow from the vantage point of the top of a mountain and misrepresented that argument to debate whether darkness is visible to the east during a sunset from a mountaintop. Again, we all know it gets darker to the east away from a setting sun. Let's get to Strawman Bob's laughable conclusion, and hopefully this will be the last time you hear this joker on my channel.
Here's our situation. Taboo Conspiracy, you put a challenge out, and I have met it. You wanted to see the encroaching shadow of the Earth. I showed it to you. You wanted to see it from a mountaintop. I showed it to you. I didn't do it with one photograph. I did it with a number of photographs, including natural clouds and rocket plumes. So, are you going to man up and show intellectual honesty and admit that the evidence shows that your challenge has been met? And will you make a video admitting that?
Seriously? You have the audacity to speak of intellectual honesty here? Totally misrepresenting both of my arguments is what you consider intellectual honesty? No, Bob, you did not even come close to meeting my challenge. First, I did not ask for pictures of the eastern band of darkness from a mountaintop far away from a departing sun. I asked for proof of the Mount Rainier upward shadow from the vantage point of a mountaintop, which is the only correct position to determine whether there is such an upward mountain shadow. Of course, this upward mountain shadow does not exist, and there are many videos and photographs filming both sunrises and sunsets from the tops of mountains showing exactly how the tip of the mountain's shadow ends at the horizon line so long as the observer is at the summit. I don't know how to make that any simpler to understand. Second, I did not ask for pictures of easterly darkness at the horizon and the belt of Venus, the opposite direction of a setting sun in the west. I asked for proof of an upward Earth bulge shadow racing across the underside of the clouds from east to west as the globe model and your claim regarding the supposed upward Mount Rainier shadow demands. I want to see proof of this unmistakable upward Earth bulge shadow zipping across the underside of clouds. If the Earth were a globe and the sun were truly angled lower than the horizon, then we should see this unmistakable upward bulge shadow frequently. The Earth bulge shadow does not exist. The sun is never angled lower than the horizon, producing an upward shadow. Ergo, there is no globe. Of course, I don't expect Bob to acquiesce and admit he's wrong, as he would have to admit the globe faults. I do expect Bob to continue to misdirect, lie, and present strawman arguments, as that is what liars do. Nevertheless, Bob did unwittingly give us another clear look into the intellectual dishonesty of the globe propagandists. In addition, Bob's utter failure to counter these flat earth proofs only evinces how intellectually vapid the globe position truly is.
Exactly what Taboo Conspiracy is asking to see. Now here's an excellent image taken from a mountaintop, just as Taboo Conspiracy asked for. Taboo Conspiracy, you put a challenge out, and I have met it. Are you going to man up and show intellectual honesty and admit that the evidence shows that your challenge has been met? And will you make a video admitting that?